I decided to look into this mostly because of my field of study. I work at Latin-Works, and so I am obviously interested in the Hispanic market. And also I wanted to see what top global US brands were doing in order to try to reach this market. So to start off, the US Hispanic market, as a lot of us know, is the largest growing minority in the United States. And when the 2010 census came out, it was a huge deal because it revealed that there were 50.5 million Hispanics living in the US. So between the time of 2000 and 2010, the population grew 43%. And another interesting thing is that Hispanics have a lot of buying power. They have a lot of economic clout. My research questions were, one, how do global brands try to convince US Hispanic consumers to buy their products? And two, I wanted to look at what the brands were doing in the multimedia space. Because I know, and now we all know, that Hispanics over-index in mobile, social media, and the use of the web. So the method I used for this presentation was I took the BrandZ Top 100 Global Brands, and then I referenced them against the list of the top 10 U.S. Hispanic advertising agencies in the U.S. So of the top 10, which are Dieste, the Vidal Partnership, Bravo Group, Global Hue, Lopez Negrete, Zuby Advertising, Bromley, Latin-Works, and Alma DDB. So I took that list and then I used the BrandZ list, and I just went to their websites of the agencies to see what brands were represented from this list. So overall I came up with a total of 14 brands altogether. So the 14 were AT&T, Verizon, Walmart, T-Mobile, Visa, Toyota, Budweiser, Accenture, Subway, MasterCard, Pepsi, Nissan, the Home Depot, and Sony. The thing I wanted to look for in the advertisements was language. Are they using English? Are they using Spanglish? Are they using just Spanish? And from previous research, I found that most often they use Spanish. Hispanics like to be advertised to in Spanish because it's, their native language and what they can identify with. But they also, depending on their acculturation levels, sometimes like to be advertised to in English. And one study found that the more acculturated they were, the more likely they wanted to see English, which of course makes sense. And then there's the use of Spanglish, which is a mix of English and Spanish, meaning they go back and forth between the two. But for this, other studies mostly found that they would do the copy in Spanish and keep the logo and tag in English, or vice versa, just depending on the brand. So I wanted to take a look at that and see, what was the most prevalent. And then I also looked at the use of soccer, the use of Hispanic celebrities, and then Hofstede's cultural dimensions, which of course we all know: power, distance, individualism and collectivism, masculinity and femininity, uncertainty avoidance, and long-term and short-term orientation. So overall, I looked at a total of 32 ads. I went to the websites for the agencies and looked at the ads that they had on there only. I didn't Google them, I didn't look them up on YouTube, I just used the database that the agencies had online. So Global Hue doesn't post their ads online, so we couldn't look at the Accenture ads, and then the Bromley Group, their website was down, so those weren't taken into account either. And for all the ads, some of them had a lot and some of them only had a little bit, so I just picked 2 at random for each medium, if available. So some mediums only had 1, and then some mediums weren't present at all. So overall, I looked at TV, radio, print, interactive, and digital. And for the digital, I didn't code for any dimensions, just any dimensions, because in most cases they were like a Facebook site or a web page, and there's just way too much going on. So overall, there were 28 traditional media ads, 4 digital, and 1 interactive, which was interesting because, like I said before, we know Hispanics are big in the mobile space. So it doesn't make sense why they would not want to use interactive or digital. So the top themes overall were the use of Spanish. Mostly all of the ads use Spanish, 5 use English, and 2 use Spanglish. The use of soccer was quite heavy. It was about half. 10 of the overall 28 traditional media ads referenced soccer, took place at a soccer game, talked about soccer, they were playing soccer. It was pretty abundant, and I think that if you were to look at English language advertising, there probably wouldn't be as much soccer. And for Hispanics, soccer is really popular, really important, and especially in Mexico and overseas. So it only makes sense that, you know, they would come from Mexico or come from Spain, move over to the US, and still have this same passion and love for soccer. So it's obvious that these global brands are using that, they know that, and they're reaching them with something that they can relate to, the same way as they would probably relate to Americans or Anglo-Americans using football. Another theme was comedy. A vast majority of the ads use comedy. I think only 1 used a rational appeal, and maybe like 9 or 10 use an emotional appeal, but overall funny advertisements. Masculinity was a big theme, which is representative of the culture. But what was interesting there is that it was about half and half masculine, half neutral. There was only 1 ad that showed feminine traits, and it was for T-Mobile. And it was extremely stereotypical, a woman on the phone talking to her friend explaining a telenovela, which is a Spanish language soap opera. So, of course, they're playing off the stereotypes, not only in Hispanic culture, but in American culture. But overall, it was masculinity and neutral, which is pretty interesting because one would expect it to be masculine, since the stereotypes of Hispanic men are that they're very masculine. But this could show sort of a shift in the culture or a change. And it's also, in the book, it talks about how America is known as a very masculine culture also, so you would expect to see that as well because they are US Hispanics. But this, you know, the half and half kind of makes this interesting and shows maybe a switch in the culture or in the way advertisers are trying to portray them. Short-term basis, most of the ads were on a short-term basis. And this could be a reflection of the culture that, you know, it's changing, they're becoming enculturated, they're wanting change in their lives. But also it could be a reflection of the brands. Fast food, cell phones, beer, they all kind of have these short-term benefits. So that makes sense as well. And collectivism. Collectivism was a huge theme. I think 20 of the 28 ads showed collectivism over individualism. And of course, this is representative of the Hispanic culture. They are known to value family. They have more kids in the household, bigger families. They have more events with families. Their lives are more centered around their family. They're more likely to have grandparents living in the home, other relatives living in the home. So this is definitely representative of the culture, and it shows that these top brands are trying to reach Hispanics in a way that makes sense to them. So then we can just go into some examples of the advertisements. For MasterCard, I have a TV advertisement called Ramirez, and it's your classic MasterCard advertisement, you know, labeling out the costs of everything, and at the end, something's priceless. But this one's really interesting because it shows basically all of the most popular themes that I found. It's about soccer, it shows collectivism with the family, it has an emotional appeal over a comedy, but I still think it's a little bit funny. Masculinity, it's a father and a son, and then it's a long-term benefit. So the ad basically goes from when it's a father with his son who's a newborn and he buys him a soccer jersey. You know, and it's like soccer jersey, blah, blah, dollars. And then he grows up and he redoes his room with his whole soccer team, and then he just goes through different stages of his life buying jerseys and wigs and face paint to go to soccer games. And then at the end, it comes out where his son is a fan of a different team than he is. And it says something about finding out that your son has his own point of view is priceless. And another MasterCard print ad is basically the print version of this TV ad, the same boy at a soccer game, decked out in full soccer gear, cheering. But it's different because it shows individualism. It's just the boy by himself, but yet it still plays on soccer. And it's still sort of an emotional appeal if you're aware of the advertisement, the TV advertisement. And then for AT&T, there's a commercial titled The Other Lopez. And this one again shows a lot of the same themes that I found. It shows collectivism, it has Spanish, and it's definitely masculinity. It's an older man and he sees a show on TV or on the internet, and it's a family and they're the Lopez's and they're karate fighters. And he's like, I'm a Lopez, I want to be like them. So he's training and his kids are helping him and his wife's kind of making fun of him. And he's training to be the other Lopez. And so this definitely shows the play on family, that family is really important. It could be just this guy by himself going to training, but his family is definitely involved in the situation. It's very masculine, you know, he's like, I want to be tough, I want to be a karate fighter, like I can do this too. But at the same time, it's still really funny and has this comedic appeal. And then lastly, I wanted to show the T-Mobile interactive ad. I think this is the most interesting out of all of them. First of all, because it's the only one I found that used mobile and was interactive, but it had really great results. It took place during the World Cup, which is obviously a huge avenue for Hispanics. But what they did was they showed a banner at the bottom of the screen that said, so the title is called Coach Your Team. And what you do is you text to a number how you would have done the play differently. And so the example is something about, hey Baldy, the goal's on the left. So it's real funny stuff. And so T-Mobile took all these advertisements, and during halftime they picked a bunch of them and had a voiceover recorded in studio. And then when the game came back, a square pops up in the corner of your TV screen with what looks like a live coach saying your comment to the team. And it has your text and then your name and city at the bottom of it. So it's extremely personalized, very interactive, has a really fast turnaround, and it shows all of the themes that I found to be prevalent in all of the other types of advertisements. It's in Spanish, it has soccer, it shows collectivism, you know, there's your family involved, there's the team involved, and then of course the interaction between the brand and the person. It's definitely funny. Masculinity for sure, and it has a very, very short-term goal. And T-Mobile actually, in 2011, their statistics showed that 25% of their business comes from Hispanics, which is more than any other carrier, versus AT&T's only 12% and Verizon's 10%. There's definitely really, really great results for T-Mobile, and this kind of shows that Hispanics are in the mobile space and they are interactive, and it's kind of a nod to other brands to maybe take note. So just wrapping up, the most prevalent themes I found were kind of what you would expect. I think the most important call out would be that all of the ads were, not all, they were half and half neutral, half masculine, which to me was interesting. And then I think collectivism overall is really important because it just shows that it's a reflection of the Hispanic culture and a reflection of our society. And lastly, it shows that there are 14 of the top global brands, meaning the most important brands in the world, that are represented by the top Hispanic agencies. So obviously these brands are spending a good amount of money to be in this space to advertise to these people.